Welcome back. Let's get into our second discussion for the evening. Fleurhof residents are outraged as 11-year-old Jayden-Lee Meek's mother now stands accused of murdering her own son. She made her first appearance in the Roodepoort Magistrate's Court yesterday after her arrest over the weekend. Tiffany Meek publicly pleaded for justice as the search for her missing son intensified in May. His body was discovered a day later, just a few meters away from his mother's apartment. But for more on this, we are joined by Action SA Member of Parliament Dereleen James, and from Save the Children South Africa, we're joined by Megan Briede speaking to us. So, ladies, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I do want to do this, Dereleen, if you'll allow me, before we actually get into this issue of Jayden-Lee Meek. We've got news that's just broken, and just get to your position as Action SA, if you could please. The presidency announcing the appointment of the acting Minister of Police, that's going to be Gwede Mantashe up until the end of the month. That is to allow for Prof. Kachalia to retire and then take over as acting police minister from the beginning of August. What do you make of that announcement?
What will he be doing until the end of the month? Another political appointment, and not pleasing to many South Africans. We've seen that that man does not have the will, the know-how on, how policing works. So it is rather disappointing that politics gets placed before South Africans.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Just a quick reaction, and I know that we'll be looking at it a little bit more closely as time goes on. But let's get into the discussion that we have called you ladies here for. Jayden-Lee Meek, I mean, back in May, it was just one of the most horrible stories you could ever hear. This 11-year-old boy found half naked with bruises all over his body in this building. And Dereleen, if I let you go first once again, because around that time you really stepped in. And in fact, there was a sense that you got quite close to really wanting to give support to the mother. And I know that this might be difficult because we've seen over the past few days just how emotionally triggered you have been as well by what's happened there. But take us back to your interactions with Tiffany Meek in the moments that we were still wanting to find answers and find the little boy and what happened to him, and just, how close that relationship bonded. And I do need to note this, that as per South African constitution and law, this woman is considered innocent until proven guilty. That needs to be reiterated. But take us through your interactions with her, Dereleen.
I think let me clear this firstly. Yesterday, when the Deputy Minister briefed the media after the court appearance, she said, you know what, she really feels for Honourable James, since I have been journeying with the mum, since I have been trying to open up spaces and avenues for the mum to come and plead her case at the Parliament's Portfolio Committee for Police. That statement needs to be corrected. I have no affiliation to Tiffany. I have never ever engaged any of the family members. I think what drew my interest as Action SA is to ensure that we uphold the rule of law. There was an 11-year-old child in a community of Fleurhof. It could have been anywhere in South Africa. And I think it was the fact that, I was watching the story on social media and I heard the allegations from the community saying that only one van was dispatched on the night when Jayden-Lee was reported missing. I then decided, as my mandate and my powers as a portfolio committee, to conduct oversight at the Florida police station. I then pursued that matter by conducting oversight, and my questions were simple. It was never about me interfering with the actual investigation, but I simply wanted to know, what did SAPS do the minute that mother reported her child missing? I can tell you to date, despite me trying to summons the station commander to come and account, despite me asking for many requests from the police, all the time they said, you cannot get involved. Your questions are going to compromise the case. And I said, it's not about the case. It is about the fact that we've had so many reports of only one vehicle being dispatched on the night when she had reported Jayden-Lee missing. The other aspect I also wanted to sort of highlight, when you have a child, a minor, in urgent need of care and protection, why didn't they charge her with neglect since the child arrived home at 2:00? And she only reported that child missing later on that evening. And that is how I got involved in this matter.
Yeah, okay. And that clarity, very important. So thank you so much for that. And then we'll get into, just as the time went, the information that did come forward. So many questions around how we got to a point where now his mother is the suspect. But Megan, do you want to give your thoughts on this? A development that we saw taking place over the past few days that no one would have expected, surely.
Well, absolutely. I think it did come as a shock, especially as the mother had reported the incident or the child missing. So it was quite a deviation or distraction for people to immediately assume that the child had befalled a misfortune within the community from surrounding areas. It is not uncommon, though, and we have spoken about it over and over again in media, that we always assume that the risk to our children are strangers. But in fact, most cases demonstrate to us that the greater risk to children comes from within their immediate environment and from people that they are known to.
I'm thinking about what we heard today. Megan, I'll let you go first, from the Department of Education in Gauteng, that there were reports from the school that this little boy went to, that he had spoken to the school about abuse that he was facing in his home. And unfortunately, you say, we've seen these sort of things before. There's a sense that maybe something could have been done to prevent it.
Well, absolutely. And our present legislation clearly states that there are certain categories of people who are mandated. And when that word mandated is used, it means you have to report that abuse. And teachers are one of the professions, along with social workers, police officers, medical professionals, who are mandated to report. So if you receive a report, even if you cannot prove it, you are not bound to prove it. Your job is to escalate it and make sure that the right people are engaging and looking into the allegation that has been brought forward by the child. And that is a miscarriage of justice to Jayden-Lee, that did not happen, if of course it is found that it wasn't escalated. I do believe Department of Basic Education is investigating. If it was not escalated, why not? And action would need to be taken.
Yeah, Dereleen, I saw you nodding when we talked about how, his death could have been prevented. Talk to us about the signs that you think were there, perhaps, that we missed.
I think it's clear that we have legislation, we have the Children's Act in particular, that I think Megan is referring to, that sort of says that when you have a minor in urgent need of care and protection, and even with SAPS failing to search the flat of the mother, that still is beyond me. I mean, even yesterday after court, you had SAPS actually acknowledging and saying, only the next morning when we found the body, we deployed all resources. That for me was too much too late. Right now, we need to look into why the school didn't report this, why the Department of Education didn't dispatch their social workers, and then secondly, why didn't SAPS enter the flat? And they said no, that the mom told them. Since when do we take our instruction as SAPS members from ordinary South Africans? The mom said, you're going to waste your time when you search my flat. You can search everywhere else. And like I've said, case studies has proven over the past, I think the third quarter crime stats released over 200 cases of GBV. And it shows there, of those cases that were tested, it actually shows that the perpetrators are close family members. So number one, SAPS did not search that flat on the evening. They arrived there with only one vehicle. Their intervention literally happened only the next morning when he was reported missing. Even when she allegedly reported him missing, and they actually sent her back and said she needs a photo. She needs to go back and come back with a photo. I mean, this is a child. This is a minor. They should have acted. And the legislation is clear. People who fail to fulfill that mandate, it is a chargeable offense. So between SAPS and the Department of Education, they can be charged if found guilty.
Yeah. Again, we reflect on how this little boy, it is alleged that he may very well have been killed in his own home. Megan, the evidence that has been presented, speaking of blood that was found in his bed, there's questions around when his injuries would have happened. Was it while the community was searching for him? And there was such a massive involvement of the community, which I think is heartwarming, but sad when it doesn't give us results. But the lessons that communities take from what we've seen happen in Fleurhof.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the key lessons within a community is that we need to keep that vigilance around our children. We need to put the pressure on services like police to look at the child as the vulnerable one, and not go into this automatic assumption that the child is maybe naughty and run off with friends. And so we make all these excuses for not escalating it. And we actually need to change our mindset and swap it the other way around. A child is a vulnerable person. They should be our first priority. And even if that child was naughty and went off to play with friends and didn't report, it doesn't matter. It's not a wasted resource when we are ensuring that a child is safe. And I think that's the perceptions we need to change. We need to take the child's need as the stand-up, most pressing fact, and not the fact that, we could waste resources, we need a waiting period,
His mother, Tiffany Meek, facing a few charges, defeating the ends of justice, crime and injuria, and attempting to defeat the ends of justice, as well as that one count of murder. Dereleen, your ideal outcome of that court process?
For me, life imprisonment, no bail, and I'm sure there has been accomplices to this heinous crime that's been committed. I think, as women, one sort of wants to look at her and think, you know what, maybe she was going through the most, maybe it was the pressures of life, maybe she had an emotional breakdown, maybe she's on substance. But look, when I look at the occurrence of events and how long it took, up until the next day, all her actions, and I look at what occurred even after his funeral, she continued to post every day, she continued to rally this community. She continued to play on the heartstrings of many South Africans. She literally had us wrapped around her finger. And I think that in itself, over a month, I've known for the longest time that it was her. I knew over, I think 3 weeks ago, it was her, because sort of all the evidence that was found in the flat, and we were basically just waiting for forensic reports to confirm, that it is indeed Jaden's blood. And, she had engagements with SAPS. And after having engagements with SAPS, still taking to national television, still doing interviews and pretending as if though you are out there looking for the killer when we are marching right next to the killer, I think that needs a sort of I don't know who's going to analyze her mindset, but I'm trying to make sense of, you knew it was you. Why did you still lobby support from the public? Why didn't you just go quiet?
Yeah. Megan, final thoughts, your ideal outcome from the court process?
Well, definitely, we always want to see justice served. We expect that there will be proper process, and if found guilty, that we will see sentencing like we've seen in recent, months with the Jocelyn Smith case, where we actually saw, good, solid messaging being sent that we will not tolerate any abuse of children in our country.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to us. It really is such an important, discussion to have. And of course, it must be noted, we need to reiterate this, that despite the views of ourselves and even our panelists, we need to remember that Tiffany Meek legally is considered innocent until proven guilty, as per that process that is still set to play out in the court. But thank you to Megan Briede of Save the Children South Africa, and Dereleen James, Action SA Member of Parliament. Let's take a short break. We're back in a moment.